I'm Travis and you're watching Curious Tangents. And this is where it all begins. Not Earth, of course. I'm referring to ancient Mesopotamia, a redundant sentence as Mesopotamia no longer exists. It's modern-day Iraq. But from it, we see quite a few inventions. One of them is civilization. Another is dragons. The first two dragons that show up in Mesopotamian mythology are called Tiamat and Abzu, and they essentially give birth to the rest of their pantheon. Civilization, as we define it, began in Mesopotamia. Dragons, however, did not. Dragons predate what we define as civil. If you study anthropology, then you'll notice some things that are shockingly similar across cultures, even when those cultures didn't interact with one another. Behaviors, tools, and artifacts created in one region of the world are also created in completely unrelated regions of the world. No one needs to tell humanity how to build a sword, they will simply do it. Spears are the same way, and so are fishhooks. On the Polynesian islands, where islanders were separated by, the ocean, they still independently created fishhooks that had slight distinctions between them, but still were fishhooks. It's like how convergent evolution works to create species who are not related to each other, but are similar in the way that they are designed or in their abilities. Dolphins and fish aren't related, but they both propel themselves in similar ways. Which brings me back to dragons. Pretty much wherever you can find evidence of humanity, you can also find lore of dragons. What can these dragons tell us about us? And why are there so many of them? But first, why are there so many snakes? Snakes are everywhere across mythology, from the ancient Greece underworld filled with gorgons who turned to stone when the light hit them, the most famous of which being Medusa, who turned others to stone and had a head full of snakes. To the Australian Aborigines who had many different versions of their rainbow snake, the deity from which all of Mother Nature emerged. Or from the book of Genesis, where the serpent tempts Eve into the original sin, eating the apples from the Garden of Eden. And perhaps most famously, in this plane with Samuel L. Jackson. There are countless other examples, but with the exception of Australia, wherever the snakes are, evil tends to follow. Snakes have been a danger to humanity for a very long time. The first snakes appear in the fossil record approximately 130 million years ago, meaning that the first snakes predate the first T-Rexes by about 62 million years. Snakes are old. Snakes also predate humanity and human-like creatures for about 128 million years, which means that snakes have been eating humans since the beginning. Many anthropologists, people who study humanity, have theorized that the reason why snakes are such a prevalent danger in our stories is because snakes have been such a prevalent danger for us and our ancestors. It's thought that snakes have hunted humans for so long and so often that we have developed an innate fear of snakes. This is supported by a weird facet of domestication. Ever wanted to ride a zebra? You probably can't. Despite the fact that they appear to just be the striped cousin of horses, they are actually far more aggressive. Potentially because they evolved in one of the harshest and most competitive environments on Earth, Southeast Africa. Zebras are hunted by some of the most apex predators on the planet. Lions, leopards, crocodiles, and us. We have lived on the same landmass as zebras for far longer than we've lived on the same landmass as horses. And in part because of this, it's thought that zebras innately fear the figure of a human being, whereas horses do not. And so we can ride horses and we cannot ride zebras. Disregard that image. And so it's thought that because snakes have hunted us for so long, we have become innately afraid of them, that they have a deep-seated place in our psyche, and so they show up over and over in our mythology. There are some problems with this idea though. There have been a lot of psychological studies that are essentially scare babies. From these studies, we've learned that there's only two real innate human fears: loud noises and falling. Everything else that you fear, whether it's rejection or ophiliophobia, the fear of snakes, is a learned behavior. J.R.R. Tolkien, one of the most revered and in-depth fantasy writers ever, once said that I find dragons to be the most fascinating creatures of the imagination. So let's look at Tolkien's dragons. Let's take a look at his dragon Smaug. Smaug is undoubtedly the coolest thing about the Hobbit franchise. He's enormous, fire-breathing, and demands attention. He's also a wyvern, a type of European dragon created by many cultures in the Nordic regions. Fun fact, if dragons were to actually exist, these would be the most likely candidates. The reason, because they're tetrapods, along with all other vertebrates. This means they have a four-limbed body plan, and this goes for things that don't even appear to have limbs. And this goes for things that appear to only have two limbs, like birds or whales. For instance, whales have gigantic pectoral fins, but they also have vestigial leg bones where legs used to be. Birds only have two legs, but they have wings in their place. Humans only have two legs, but they've got arms instead. And snakes have vestigial limbs, remnants of once useful legs. Dragons have a body plan that's never been seen before in a vertebrate. No, not the large winged scaliness that's been done before. Just look at Quetzalcoatl. I mean the six-leggedness of most other dragons. In Europe, you find dragons that have larger, more cat-like bodies. In Asiatic countries, dragons tend to be more elongated, snake-like. But the problem is that they have four legs and one pair of wings. This never happens in real creatures. This brings me to Quetzalcoatl, a dragon of Mesoamerica. Often called the feathered serpent, in mythology it was thought to be the connection between Earth and Venus. Thought to be the source of learning and agriculture, Quetzalcoatl was worshipped like a god. Quetzalcoatl looks a lot more like a snake than most dragons. Although we cannot innately fear snakes, you can be preconditioned to fear them. In China, dragons were looked at as a source of authority and power and strength. And so there were stories told of how the emperor descended from the dragons. Dragons were used as a way to legitimize authority, as opposed to Europe, where dragons were looked at as gatekeepers, the thing standing in the way of gold and resources. Although we cannot innately fear the snakes and serpents that dragons are based on, we are preconditioned to fear what is dangerous. Being preconditioned doesn't mean that you do something innately, it only means that you are dispositioned to doing it. And humanity is dispositioned to fearing snakes. Dragons are also combinations of other creatures. Mouths like crocodiles and lions, Asiatic dragons frequently have stripes resembling that of tigers, bodies similar to that of most big cats, and manes similar to that of lions. And so it's thought that dragons are a type of schema, or a combination that we make up to represent something, in this case, what is dangerous for humanity. But you might be asking at this point, what is the point? You see, the interesting thing about dragons isn't that they're enormous or imposing or demand attention. Well, that stuff is cool, but the really interesting thing is that we all created them. For longer than society has existed, so have dragons in a way. They're not tangibly real, of course. Our world didn't originate from them like it says in some stories, and our ancestors didn't slay them. But they did create them. Fish are born into the water and they stay in the water their entire lives, unless they leave and thus life ends. It's thought by some that because the medium of water is so ubiquitous, the fish never notices it. It doesn't know what it's been swimming in. It can be said that fish are to water what humans are to civilization. If we were to leave this behind, we would die in droves on a planet that cannot support the massive requirements of our species. We're so caught up in differences, ready to distinguish ourselves and distinguish others, that we oftentimes forget the water that we've all been swimming in. And thank you for watching. So, really quick before you click off, I have a podcast that's probably coming out around the end of this month. Look for it on the 28th if everything goes as planned, because that's the 1-year anniversary of me having this channel, at least of me actually putting out videos. Secondly, that Q&A that I mentioned a few months ago when John Green shouted out when John Green shouted out this channel will be coming out on that same day. Thirdly, I have a Patreon and a Twitter that you can follow me on, and thank you. One more note, I'm trying to make this more frequent. I know I've said that a bunch of times over my year of uploading, but you'll probably see more uploads and more experimental stuff. So if you have any ideas, comment them down below. And thank you for watching again.